This is Tom Noonan. You're listening to Without Your Head.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I am Nasty Neil.
This is Annabelle Lecter.
And we're joined by writer, animator, director, Harry Chaskin.
How's it going, guys? Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's great. Really happy to find you. Was honestly just perusing Kickstarters. There was someone else out there who had something. I'm like, screw. I'm just gonna browse around movies. And there was Steel Cut Oats.
Steel Cut Oats.
Neil, look at this. And we looked at it like, oh my god, this is amazing. This looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And so here we are. So tell us about Steel Cut Oats.
Well, Steel Cut Oats is a stop-motion, live-action hybrid short film. It's kind of a horror noir sci-fi, and it's sort of my own strange retelling of the folktale of the golem. You know, Eastern European folktale. Rabbi builds this big monster out of clay and invokes life. But in our case, it focuses on a washed-up boxer who builds this giant monster out of oatmeal to protect himself against the mobsters who broke his legs. Pretty normal stuff.
And based on a true story.
Yeah, it's autobiographical from my early boxing career. No, no, totally made up, but definitely plays into a lot of themes, genres, aesthetics that have influenced me as a filmmaker my whole life. So really excited to put it out there and show it to the world, hopefully.
Yeah. Oddly enough, just maybe 2 weeks ago on the show, we were talking about golems. And so it was so it had like everything, because I'm a huge fan of stop motion, and then golems, and something I do talk about on the show a lot is there's so many zombies and stuff. There's a lot of great monsters in lore. Why not use some of these that aren't used all the time? And what is it about a golem that interests you?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. It's hard to put into words. It's, I saw the old silent film, The Golem, as a kid, and that had a profound sort of visceral influence on me, the 1920 film. Something about it just really, as it relates, I think, for me as an artist and an animator, to the act of creation. It's sort of this interesting allegory of bringing this thing to life. I'm also a huge fan of Frankenstein. I think that there's definitely some influences and similarities there. I just love the idea of a creation gone wrong that takes on a life of its own. Certainly when you're animating a character in stop motion, it doesn't always go as intended, and I guess that a puppet misbehaving is sort of a microcosm of the golem story, and just something I can relate to.
Yeah.
You have had a lot of success as an animator, and I think a lot of people will recognize the stuff you've worked on. I know Robot Chicken. There's a bunch of them. Why don't you lift off some of the things our people would know you for?
Oh, geez. Let's see. I've worked as an animator and director on shows like Robot Chicken, Mary Shelley's Frankenhole from Adult Swim. Directed a series called WWE Slam City. Did a web series for L Studio called Friendship All Stars of Friendship, because I like long, ridiculous titles. I mean, those are the first few that come to mind. I've also done a lot of commercials, music videos, things like that. But definitely Robot Chicken and Mary Shelley's Frankenhole are two of the bigger ones that usually people have heard of.
Yeah. How important is Adult Swim for letting some people get some bizarre stuff out there that might not be seen otherwise?
Well, that's one of the great things about Adult Swim. I think all of their programming from the get-go has been very outsider kind of. They go after the creators whose work looks like, all right, they're the stoner teenager who was drawing this thing in a notebook for 15 years. I think that they're a great outlet for sort of the underrepresented artists, both in terms of their regular programming and also interstitials, weird music videos, set pieces. I don't know if you saw that thing, Too Many Cooks, that came out probably 5 or 6 months ago. It was just one of those bizarre 5-minute shorts that probably on any other network wouldn't have found a mainstream venue to exist in, but I think they're really good about representing artists like that, and also just embracing different aesthetics from Flash, stop motion, CG, traditional 2D. All their stuff looks different and always has a really interesting look to it. So yeah, it's fun to work on all their stuff.
That's another thing too. Is you mentioned it's a short. It also things on Adult Swim aren't necessarily half hour. Some of them are like 12 minutes, and you wouldn't really see that on another network.
Yeah, no, I think the length, they sort of pioneered that 11-minute show length, 15 minutes with commercials, and now I see more and more networks doing that. Fox took it on with ADHD, and starting to see it on other networks like FX. And as a creator, I think that's a really good thing. Certainly, I don't like to, if I can help it, be beholden to a length. Obviously, if you're working on a commercial or something, you get it down to 30 seconds or the 1 minute or whatever. But I'm interested in telling all kinds of stories, whether it's a 5-minute thing, a 12-minute thing, a half-hour show, or a feature film. And I think, too, that's sort of looking ahead towards more and more content becoming streaming or at, just online. I think standardized lengths are going to become less important. It's going to be less of a dictum that people have to follow. So, yeah, all for more short form content.
Why don't you tell us more about this Kickstarter as far as, what are you trying to do for money? How much time do you have to do it? Perks, all that good Kickstarter stuff.
All that good Kickstarter stuff. Yeah, so running a Kickstarter to raise the production funds for Steel Cut Oats. It's a short film, but beyond being a short film, I'm really looking at it as a proof of concept to essentially usher in an aesthetic that's really important to me. I have a whole slew of shorts, features, music videos, content that my team and I want to produce that essentially looks toward the future while paying homage to the past. I'm really into tactile, handmade filmmaking, and Steel Cut Oats is sort of the first step in that process officially for me. Stop motion is one of the oldest special effects art forms in film history, but with Steel Cut Oats, I'm really looking to employ stop motion creature effects, traditional matte paintings, hanging miniatures, hand-drawn 2D optical effects like the electricity in the original Frankenstein. And really, it's just a way to combine all these disciplines into something that looks new and feels old. So we're running a Kickstarter to raise the funds. It's an ambitious project in that it combines all these different mediums. You've got a full-on live-action production with all of the challenges therein, 20 different actors, costuming them, finding full-scale locations. And then on top of that, you've got this total other stop-motion pipeline of fabricating the puppets, shooting them on their own sets, compositing it all together, and hopefully making something that doesn't look like anything anybody's ever seen before. So yeah, the Kickstarter, really excited about that. We've gotten quite a good response so far, but we've still got a ways to go. It's running for another 10 days as of today. And there's a lot of great rewards involved with that too, if you want to become a part of that. A lot of Kickstarters, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like a lot of Kickstarters I see offer perks like T-shirts or bookmarks or what have you. And we've got a little bit of that, but one of the things that I love about stop motion is the amount of artwork that's organically generated from making the project. So rather than slapping oats on a t-shirt and printing a bunch of those, if you contribute to Steel Cut Oats, you can get original storyboard panels drawn by our amazing storyboard artist, a friend of mine, Ashley Lenz, who has worked on many amazing animated projects from, Disney's The Frog Princess to The Simpsons, Futurama. He was an Emmy Award-winning director on Dan Versus. And holy shit, the guy can draw like every board he does. Because I draw too, but the stuff that he draws just blows me away. And, we have hundreds of storyboard panels that he's created for this. We've got original handcrafted props. It's a boxing story, so you've got tiny boxing gloves, hanging miniatures. It's the live action portion is going to be shot on various locations, but I really want to create a world that looks interesting. So I'm planning to augment all of these locations with miniatures and matte painting extensions. So, for example, the house that the main character and his monster live in is going to be a miniature that we're going to take out and within the camera lens line up to overlap with a real hill that we've scouted. And that way the miniature and the hill will exist within the same light. And you get this amazing live action miniature composite shot that's done entirely in camera. And, that house will be something that you could take home if you give it that tier and get a prop reward. We've got the puppets themselves, which are going to be beautiful. My friend Ron Cole is helping fabricate those, and he, like me, is a big proponent of proving that stop motion is still a viable alternative for believable creature effects. I grew up watching classic Ray Harryhausen movies and King Kong and, all these amazing films that come 1992 when Jurassic Park came out, that kind of superseded the idea that stop motion could be used for believable creature effects. But the truth is, as advanced as computer effects have gotten and as many amazing things as they can do with them now, stop motion has continued to evolve as well. We can do things now with compositing and motion blur and lensing and camera moves to really create a believable character out of stop motion that exists in the real world and interacts with live characters. So
yeah, like mentioning the scene with the house and the hill, that just sounds amazing. That would, I'm just thinking, oh my God, I really would truly love to see that done. And I think that and I think our audience out there, a lot of us are in the same general age range and also like the same kinds of movies. Obviously, that's why they're here. But that is, and you said something in your like little Kickstarter trailer, is that there's something about watching something that someone's hands have actually been on that seems to somehow resonate with people. There's something about that tactile presence.
Yeah, I think
that people connect with.
Absolutely. I think it's twofold. One, there's just no substitute in creating something believable for a real object that's being photographed under real lights with a real lens. As good as your computer renderings get, there's still a little bit of artificiality there, an uncanny valley. But beyond that, I think there's something about the spontaneity of stop motion that transfers, like, not to get weird and metaphysical about it, because I'm not that kind of guy, but there is a spontaneity that happens with a puppet on set that is different from the sort of endless iterations and tweaking you can do with multiple passes of a CG animated shot. And I think that's what's always attracted me to stop motion. It's sort of, this is a weird analogy, but it's kind of the improv comedy of the animation world, in that it's straight ahead. You can't block out a broad performance and then layer something else on top of that in another pass, and then something else on top of that. Everything that you want the character to do has to happen each frame, and you need to do it from beginning to end and keep track of it. And, that means that mistakes happen too, but sometimes those lead to happy accidents that you wouldn't get in another medium. That's what I was talking about with puppets not always listening to you.
Well, even the original King Kong, you can see some of the fingerprints on Kong, but then in a way it adds to it because it almost looks like his fur is ruffling a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. You get that chatter in King Kong's fur, and you can say it's chatter, or you can say, "Oh, that looks like wind." Mm-hmm. And that's a cool thing. I love being able to see the material interacting and the little imperfections that come with that, even if it's just minute specks of dust that change from frame to frame.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Harryhausen. That's one of my all-time favorites, and I still stand by the skeleton scene in Jason the Argonauts as one of the greatest scenes in any movie.
Oh, yeah, I agree. That scene's incredible. And when you think, like I said, there have been amazing advances in stop-motion technology, not the least of which has been being able to actually see via video feed in real time what you're animating while you're animating it. Like, it's so much easier. It's still challenging, but it's so much easier for me to keep track of everything because I can see what I'm animating while I'm doing it. When you think that Harryhausen was keeping track of 6 different skeletons, each with 4 appendages, all doing different things completely in his head, and then not seeing what he animated until he got the film developed. It's
Wow.
Remarkable how flawless that sequence is.
It's timeless. And why oatmeal?
Why oatmeal?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question. I don't know that. I don't know that I have an answer for that would make sense. I think, honestly, about 6 years ago, I started eating oatmeal for breakfast. I switched from some sugar cereal to oatmeal, and with stop motion, it's all about materials and textures, and I'm fascinated by tactile things. And one day I was just staring at the oatmeal on my spoon, and I guess it was a little bit of like that Close Encounters moment where he starts making the mountain out of mashed potatoes. Just looking down at the oatmeal and started nudging it around with my index finger and thinking, I wonder if you could animate this. And it's got a weird, shiny, lumpy texture. And I thought, I've never seen a creature made out of that. I wonder what that would look like. And then I started building this crazy story around it, pulling in boxing and golems and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And it's also, an old food too. It's still around, but so it connects with everything else.
Yeah, and I think that thematically, even if it wasn't intentional at the time, as I started to write the script, I built that into it because it is an old timey food, and you come to find out that the boxer who builds him, when he moves into this house, it ends up being next to a wheat field that had grown next to an abandoned nuclear power plant, and the wheat field glows green, and so if the guy that sculpts the monster is the father, then the field is kind of in a weird way the mother of this monster.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah. That's another kind of a 50s theme with the radiation, and making something mundane into a monster.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love the time period from an aesthetic standpoint. Like, I'm super into the 50s look and kind of mid-century atomic stuff. I love the Twilight Zone. I've actually been I've seen them all at one point or another, but over the last few months I've started going through it chronologically, watching every episode because I got the whole Blu-ray set. And the weird thing watching it in order is how this kind of the shadow of the bomb is hanging over every episode almost, regardless of what the actual story is, whatever the monster is, whatever the twist is. there's this kind of nuclear paranoia, weird 1950s fever dream vibe that hangs over all the episodes, and there's something interesting to me about that.
Mm-hmm. So, when did you? Now you said you grew up watching Harryhausen and King Kong and those movies. What would you say was like the biggest influence in you to get involved in this?
Well, the defining moment for me for filmmaking and stop motion, my father, when I was a kid, showed me a VHS copy of Mysterious Island, and it was, I remember it distinctly. It was the sequence where the crab monster comes up out of the out of the sand and starts attacking the people. And that was a real crab that Harryhausen had actually bought at a fish market, and then had a taxidermist humanely dispose of, and then built an armature inside of it. And there was something that, I don't know, my kid brain put together, that it was a real crab, but doing things that a real crab could never do. And I'd never seen anything like that. And I became obsessed with it. And then my dad told me, he explained the process to me, and he knew quite a bit about stop motions. He was able to give me a much better explanation than somebody else might have. And I remember being fascinated by the idea that when the crab had to interact with a human, Harryhausen would build a little human puppet that looked just like the actor, because there was no way at the time to convincingly composite an actual actor into a scene like that. And I don't know, I just became obsessed with the illusion of life in this crab, and the trick photography, and just this strange, painstaking means of telling a fantastical story. So that was the first thing I saw. And then, of course, I immediately sought out everything else I could, from all the other Harryhausen movies to 50s B monster movies, Star Wars. If it was animated, I tried to get my hands on it and watch it. And that was the beginning. Soon after that, I got my hands on a Super 8 camera and started animating little Matchbox cars crashing in my parents' driveway, and I doused them with lighter fluid and on fire, which I don't think they were thrilled about, but still have all my fingers.
Look at you now. Yeah.
Right.
Now I'm setting things on fire professionally.
Exactly.
Yes.
You have to start somewhere.
I remember this story didn't go as quite as well when I was a kid. My brother and I had the idea to make armor for the action figures, and we were going to use metal off batteries, and we started breaking them open, and battery acid flew in my eye. So I do not recommend that.
Wow.
Stay away from the battery.
Yeah, don't bust open batteries. There's some good advice.
Yeah.
Did you come out of it unscathed?
No, I believe I have a permanent scar on my eye. Ball.
Yeah, and you were legally blind for most of your life.
It's really uplifting.
Part of it.
It's a really uplifting story. So,
slowly drove mad. Yeah.
Exactly. So, do you still have any of those old videos of stuff that you made when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, I don't know if I have the videos anymore. Back in the day, it was a whole process with Super 8. Like I was saying with Harryhausen, you'd shoot it blind, and then you'd have to send it off and get it developed. I still have the film reels somewhere, but at one point or another, I was able to transfer them to tape. And then probably 3 or 4 years ago, I got paranoid about the VHS degrading, so I went ahead and digitized them. I have the first Super 8 film I ever completed online somewhere. I'm not going to tell you where, because I don't really want anybody to track it down. But it was this clay animated thing about mice invading a dinner party, and that was ambitious for a 10-year-old, I suppose. But
you mentioned Ron Cole earlier, who I went and looked at his website after reading about him on the Kickstarter, and his stuff's amazing. And so you have you guys have a whole crew here making the movie. Where did you guys all meet? Was it on other projects?
It's a combination of things. I'll go through the crew person by person, and stop me if it gets monotonous. But
go ahead.
Our cinematographer, Andrew Knapp, who I mentioned, shot The Birthday Boys for Odenkirk. He and I actually met in college at Cal Arts. He lived across the hall from me, and then we ended up being roommates for several years. So we're good friends that go way back, and he's always just had an amazing eye and has been into the live action side of things. So really excited to be collaborating with him on this. Our costume designer, Becky Van Cleve, I met in the stop motion world, working on, I was animating on Frankenhole season 1 while she was costuming on that. And we've both sort of just worked our way up through the ranks. She's now the costume designer on Robot Chicken and pretty much every other project that goes through Stupid Buddy Studios. And she's amazingly talented and also is a very gifted live action costumer and has been looking for more ways to combine her love of miniature fabrication with full scale wardrobe. So this seemed like the perfect project to work with her on. Our production designer, John Sumner, who can build literally anything out of cardboard. I can't I can't speak highly enough of Sumner. I met him working on Spy versus Spy for Warner Brothers. You remember the old Mad Magazine cartoons by Peter Cooper? Well, we were doing stop motion little vignettes for the Mad cartoon show on Cartoon Network, and he was responsible for all of the sets and puppets and everything for that. And we started working together then and instantly kind of struck up a friendship. Like me, he's really interested in texture. And what I love about Sumner is he's not afraid for things to look handmade and be a little bit rough around the edges. Like he really gets what makes stop motion different. And he can bust out amazingly beautiful props and sets with amazing speed because he knows exactly that balance of, what you have to do to it to make it look good for camera that maybe if you look from another angle doesn't hold up. He's amazingly talented and efficient. And Ron Cole I actually never have met in person. I had been following his work on a bunch of the stop motion forums, and I think we'd sort of been watching each other's stuff online. And finally, when I was gearing up for this project, I knew he shared a similar sensibility for kind of reinvigorating stop motion creature effects. And I shot him an email and said, hey, big fan of your work. Would you be interested in doing this crazy movie with me? And he was thankfully receptive and a super nice guy. And this will be the first project we collaborate on together. And that's a new thing for me because he's on the other side of the country. But one of the things I'm looking forward to with this project is kind of making connections and collaborating with talented people from the stop motion world all over the place and working on this thing together.
Yeah, it sounds like you built up a really good core crew of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people you have these personal connections with for a while. So it must make it sounds kind of obvious to say, but for you personally, what's the difference between working with some people you're just kind of given your job and here's these people and having people that you've known through various experiences in life work with you?
Well, I think there's a shorthand that develops, with Sumner and Becky and Ashley Lenz, our storyboard artist who I worked on WWE with. We not only do we work in the same field of animation, but we've been through many projects together, and every project has its ups and its downs, and you really kind of develop a shorthand, learn how to communicate quickly and what everybody's strengths, weaknesses, and sensibilities are. I've done so many projects with Becky and Sumner at this point. There's not that same, when you come into something fresh with a new group of people, there's sort of a lot of explanation about who you are, where you come from, what your style is, what's important, what you can let slide. And they already know all of that. Like I showed Sumner the script and all of his drawings right out of the gate. And it was like, this is exactly how I pictured it in my head because we've worked on so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of doing something efficiently and quickly and it being a fun experience, I think that's very important and a great thing to sort of have that core group standing with you that you can rely on.
I saw a lot of different pictures of the Oat Golem himself. How did you settle on the one you chose for the actual look, and who actually did those drawings?
Most of the Oats Golem drawings were drawn by me. Settling on the look, it's a process. What you saw on the Kickstarter page and the website, that's a small sample of my favorite drawings. For every 6 drawings you see on there's probably 25 or 30 that I scribbled that I just go, nah, this isn't worth showing to the world. I think that, something I tend to do with my own work, I get a very distinct image of it almost immediately in my head, and then I try to faithfully translate that to the page. And once I feel like I've got the initial design, the initial kind of impetus or core idea that I was excited about to begin with, I say, okay, I've got that. I'm not going to forget that. Now, how can I bend this, skew this, turn it on its head, try every variation imaginable? I'll draw basic shapes. I'll say, what would it look like if Oates had an upside down triangle as the core structure of his head? What would it look like if he was a cube? What would it look like if his body was 6 times the size and he had a tiny little pinhead? And I'll just sit there and sketch pretty much every permutation I can think of, and then I'll step away from it for as long as I can while still keeping the project on track. And then I'll come back to it. And the funny thing is, I think more often than not, I end up going back to the first thing I drew. But I think it's important to go through that phase of exploration, because sometimes there will be something that you wouldn't expect initially. And, stuff evolves as well from the drawing to the sculpture to the puppet. Like Ashley, our storyboard artist, has kind of done, for board purposes, his own interpretation of the oatmeal golem and the villain, who's a big steam-powered robot called Steam the Machine. And they look nothing like my designs, and for board purposes, that's fine, but they're giving me ideas that I would never have thought of that I'm probably going to incorporate into the final turnarounds and sketches before Ron takes them and turns them into puppets.
Mm-hmm. I saw the silhouette on the Facebook page, and I'm very curious to see the final villain.
The teaser for Steam the Machine. I posted a silhouette, and backers who contribute to the campaign, they can see the full design on the Kickstarter page. So nice little Easter egg there. But of course, everybody will see him in full puppet form when the short comes out. And I like being a little mysterious with him. As a character, he's going to appear throughout in a big hat and trench coat with steam emanating from his lapel. And then you get the big reveal at the end. He has this climactic title fight with Oates, the oatmeal golem, and you see him take off his boxing. He's got like one of those silk hooded boxing bathrobes.
Mm-hmm.
He takes that off, and you see him for the first time. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
Very much.
So speaking of Facebook, where can people get updates? They're going to go to the Kickstarter. What should they look up to find it? And then Facebook and things like that.
Sure. Well, if you go to Kickstarter and search for Steel Cut Oats, 3 words, that'll be the first thing that comes up, because I don't think anybody else has ever made a movie called Steel Cut Oats. Facebook, there's a Facebook page for the film, also called Steel Cut Oats. Let me see if I can get the exact address here. Bear with me.
It's facebook.com/Steel Cut Oats the movie.
There you go. Thank you, Neil.
No problem.
And if you go to my website, harrychaskin.com, it's also the front page on there right now, so you can't miss it.
Yeah, and honestly love the look of everything I've seen so far, and everything you said here.
Thank you.
It's really all stuff that I grew up being into and still am into. So it's stuff that it just sounds awesome to me, honestly.
No, I appreciate that. That's the same for everybody on our team. We're all really fans of classic horror and sci-fi and traditional handmade special effects, and just really looking to do something with that isn't quite like anything people have seen recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really exciting to think about you being able to go forward with this, which again is why we wanted you on the show, and hoping everybody out there that's listening, just go check out the Kickstarter. And if you could throw in a few bucks, some people can put in a couple hundred if they can. If you can only put in a few bucks, put in a few bucks.
Yeah, every little bit helps. And I don't know if this is incentive or not, but in order to prepare for animating it, I'm probably going to be taking some boxing classes, at least one or two, because
nice.
I need to learn all the choreography and physiology behind that. So we'll probably be posting some very embarrassing updates later on, getting the shit kicked out of me by someone who actually knows what they're doing. So if you're a glutton for punishment, you can check that out as well in a couple of months.
And honestly, even if, it's awesome if people can contribute financially, but even if you do, spread it around. Let people know what's out there. Share it with people other people that are going to be into it, because you never know. You could share it with someone that's going to be able to put in a few $100 or whatever, if you're not able to yourself.
Yeah, and that's been one of the most rewarding things about doing the Kickstarter, honestly. I've never tried to fund a short in this way before. And the most satisfying part, honestly, is kind of being able to open up and share the process. I've been posting tutorials on how to build puppets and sets and props, and, really kind of connecting with an audience of people that loves this stuff as much as I do has been a lot of fun. Stop motion, you usually lock yourself in a dark room for a year and don't come out till it's done, but it's been kind of cool to open the door on the process and get feedback from people and just really start a dialogue about the thing.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, we appreciate you coming on tonight.
No, thank you guys so much. It's been great talking with you. And,
great to have you.
Yeah.
And we'll have the link right here on the website to go to Kickstarter, so you can just click on it and be like magic, and you'll go right there.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. You
absolutely
have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thanks, and you too.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
This is Benny Chapman, the creature from the Black Lagoon, withoutyourhead.com.